Okay, hello everyone. How to move behind your eyes. And in the subtitle I've written Cultivating Internal Teleportation Through Reality Simulations. So really what I'm trying to do for this episode is to, in some sense, give the viewers a suggestion of how I have experienced moving behind my eyes, or what is the potential of such an ability. In a world where man finds himself with the world, to what extent can intelligence confirm its position? Honestly, the first distinction that needs to be made is that the human being is a creature, and it's a physical creature, but how it's administering its physical creaturehood is through abstraction. So the first thing to realize about being a human being is that we have this additional perception to reality. And this additional perception to reality, some people call it imagination. I used to call it imagination, kind of being oblivious to what that meant. But eventually I came to terms with it, and I realized that it's an access to a world. You know, I use the terms inner realms and outer realms often in these talks, and that was an achievement. That was a very profound discovery for me. So currently the way I'm using my imagination is that I discriminate between abstract events of reality and real events of reality. But once we trust reality, then we get a permission to use the abstract, to move in an abstract ways. Pretty much an object has evolved to a subject to itself. Due to its subjective position, it has access to a subjective world. What that means is I could look at this world and be like, okay, I'm a physical entity and the world is a physical place. But when I ask, how do I know the world is a physical place? I cannot ignore how my mind is the non-physical awareness to my physical reality. Awareness is not a physical quality. Somebody observing something, that's not a physical event, do you know? And what I mean by that is just the nature of sight, just the nature of being able to see something doesn't mean we are being it, you know? So what I'm trying to say is I have lived in this world as a physical individual, as a physical concept inside a physical context. But in wondering how the concept is being in the context, that's where I would say abstraction is involved. And what abstraction is, like if somebody says, all right, I got a mind, it seems like some sort of internal place, invisible room, overlaid upon the outer visible room. It's kind of like this whole episode, the intention is me trying to explain how I experience my imagination, how my imagination moves, and in some sense how I have noticed what is going on when the free will has some sort of intent to happen. Let me start from here, where a person's wondering, okay, how many ways can I move as a being? I think that's a good starting point. So right now, in this moment, when I wonder about how can I move, I can move my hand in the air, I can move my mouth where my voice box sound emerges. So I can move as a biological entity. I can move the body, right? But I realize I can't move the world. I can't suddenly envision, like let's say I envision a skyscraper, suddenly lifting up into the air, right? I can't change the outer realms. So it seems that when it comes to the movement of the human being, it's in the scope, or it's in the range of the physical body. So I kind of realized that, all right, so physically I can move my hand with my free will, but then I think about, what if I wanted to move my heart, like change my heartbeat, or if I wanted to, suddenly become conscious of how my stomach digests food, like to get the experience. It's as if the free will, the consciousness in the moment, it has a certain permission of movement, but it doesn't have a total physical permission of movement, right? It's another way of saying, in a system where it's like an involuntary, like some event of nature is happening, and we are a certain range of control. The free will does not have full control even upon the biological body due to its automated and involuntary nature, right? So when I wonder about my physical ability to move, it's like the free will has a certain range of control. It's kind of strange. It's as if like I can move the skeleton, right? But I can't move the organs, right? It's like the consciousness. What I mean is that consciously, right? I'm not saying like somebody physically can't, but I'm saying I'm just trying to share with the viewers that the starting point of wondering how we move behind our eyes, it includes wondering how we're moving in front of our eyes, right? And it's as if sensory perception enters the eyes, right? We see something and then we can do something. But also this point that it's like a lot of involuntary things are happening to even provide an ability for a voluntary, let's say, physical event. That means it's like my heart needs to beat before I think about it. My lungs need to work, like my body's in place working, and it's like I can move my hand in the air, but that movement of the hand is being done through the context of all the involuntary ways that the organs of my body are functioning. So I'm saying, just like in front of our eyes, we realize certain things are involuntary and certain things are voluntary through conscious free will. Behind our eyes, we find a different context. Now, it's really important to say, I'm not trying to tell everybody that we have the same imagination or the same thing is happening to everybody that's happening for me. But I want to say that as creatures that don't know what we truly are, every living, conscious human being has the responsibility, has the task of figuring out what's going on. There is no, think of it this way, as long as our species doesn't know what it is, it can't consider itself truly intelligent, right? Like an intelligence that doesn't know how it's being intelligent is not really that intelligent. It's kind of like something is happening, right, to this creature, and we're wondering, okay, to what level is the creature aware of? Like, right now, I'm aware of the temperature in my immediate environment. Like, it's 13 degrees Celsius here in Etobicoke, Canada. But I'm not conscious of the temperature like in the Andromeda galaxy. You see, there's certain things accessible, certain things inaccessible. Just because something is inaccessible doesn't mean it doesn't exist, and it doesn't mean just what we see exists, So a person can raise their hand in the air, voluntary control. The free will was capable of that. So really, physical movement is like we're able to move a self in a world, but we're not able to move the world. There's forces beyond us when it comes to physical law. Now, here's the incredible thing. This is the incredible part of the inner realms. The inner realms is the only state or the only way where the world can change, where the free will can change how the world looks, right? So in front of your eyes, your free will can move your body, certain voluntary, let's say, processes of the body it has control over. But when it comes to your mind, and now guys, I'm not trying to, I'm really trying to just, my intent for this episode is to explain, not in accordance to things, but tell the viewers, like, okay, what's going on behind my eyes, or how am I experiencing it. Alright guys, I think I'm tripping. There's 122 viewers right now. It jumped from 2, incredible. So, what is the intent, right? So I'm trying to explain the dimensions where consciousness can have a relationship with movement. In front of our eyes, physical body, but now when it comes behind our eyes, this is where I was having certain experiences, and then I found through certain Vedic texts, the Upanishads and Vedas. The moment these books found my eyes, it was a completely different, perception of reality. So I'll say it this way. When I was younger, I could visualize when it comes to the inner realms, what's going on behind our eyes. I remember I have a twin brother, and my twin brother, since childhood, he was a very creative individual. And I remember his imagination was so creative, but all I could do in my imagination was just to imagine letters on a wall. Like I could imagine seeing a teacher write something on a chalkboard. You come home, you see like a empty wall, and your mind can start visualizing seeing letters in it, being drawn on the wall. Something shifted at some point in my life, and it went from being capable of seeing just simple symbols in front of my eyes, behind my eyes. That means visualizing, let's say, simple symbols, just shapes. It went to actually becoming films. Now, there is a psychological existential dilemma if a person really pays attention to their content of their mind, because it's as if you're living a life in front of your eyes, your physical body, but if a person suddenly remembers yesterday, this is what I mean by cultivating internal teleportation. When a person remembers something, it's as if they are being in a moment, but somehow the events and images of another moment are simultaneously being present in that moment. Our minds are acting like time machines when it comes to suddenly poetically out of the file cabinet of our memory, pulling out a memory, So, going back towards my experiences, right? At some point, I discriminated and I noticed, okay, I'm inside a physical event, but within this physical event, which is being my body, it seems due to the brain, let's say the projection of the brain, there's a psychological event simultaneously happening in the physiological event. Now, if we take the approach of concept context, trying to figure out, so in the outer realms, my biological body, think of it as the concept, and in the outer, and my body, my physical body is the concept, and the context is the physical world. Now, when it comes to the inner realms, this concept context is very different. Behind our eyes, there is an unknown viewing attention. Okay, so what this means is that any person who says my body, my mind, my soul, or somebody says I'm celebrating my birthday, what is that awareness that can discriminate and recognize that it has multiple events? In other words, how is our awareness functioning in a way where it is conscious, it is journeying through various realities? Behind your eyes, you're not a shape. The awareness to shape is very different. When I notice that what is looking through my eyes is unknown, I realize no symbolism can replace it. I realize that the nature of the mind is, in some sense, unknown attention, or think of it this way, it's an unknown witnessing of faster pace of reality. When I come to give these Mr. Within talks, there's a moment where I actually have no opinion on anything. I'm just here in the moment. And I get stationed and grounded in how my presence, how the intelligence of my moment is like watching itself. We usually have a preference and a sort of specific connotation we want to give to ourselves. We want to know what is looking through our eyes, so we use all our memories to define it. We use the information accessible. But when a person realizes something is unknown, it's kind of like suddenly realizing, similar to in the outer realms, like realizing you don't think about your heart, it automatically beats. So in the inner realms, the way it's appearing, it's as if it's as if as I'm speaking right now, my biological the sight of my biological eyes is showing me a physical condition of where I'm existing. But simultaneously, my mind and imagination is how like my whole awareness of the moment again is like the invisible room overlaid on a visible room. In the invisible room, there's a permission for imagination to move. Now, something really remarkable about imagination, this is really the argument that suggests we're not thoughts. If somebody thinks who they are as a thought, let me tell you why we're not a thought. Because before that thought arrives, we're noticing it. Before we do something and get defined by that action, there's an awareness. So really, when it comes to you living as a mind, using your mind, the person is going from known personality to unknown presence. The unknown presence is based on trust. So if a person can trust how the moment is being present, they can get access to all the ways it can move. What I'm trying to say is that our mind is watching itself in a way where it can't be its content, so we have access to an internal observer. Think of it this way. Aristotle has this quote. He says it's the sign of an educated mind to entertain an idea without accepting it. So think of it this way. What is looking through our eyes is entertaining simulations of reality, but it is not accepting it, therefore being capable to going through it. Do you know? Something in our intelligence is noticing change. Something is watching itself here. And I have tried to think, okay, is it an object? No, there's an awareness to how physical stuff changes, how real events change. But there's also an awareness to how abstract events change. Now, something meditation teaches is that if a person stops moving their body, they can notice how their mind is moving. Now, I personally, the way my imagination works or the way I'm speaking these words, there's like an innate trust in how the moment is just present. So just like my heart beats without me thinking, right now I'm giving this talk, believe it or not, similarly, right? In the inner realms, Sorry, guys. These are coughs of research, you know. I don't know how to say it. I've pretty much in the moment, there's a known component to reality, there's an unknown component to reality. If we say in the known dimensions, in the observable dimensions of reality, we have the concept of simplicity, complexity. We have the concept of something being static and dynamic. In the inner realms, there is a dynamism and there is an ability somehow to be able to access more than one moment. That's really what the mind is. The mind is a way where we can have a bunch of moments intersect to be reality rather than just one type of moment. Think of it this way, that you're a human being, you've lived a lifetime, and so far in your life you have experienced all the ways your physical body has changed, and you have also experienced all the ways that every day that you wake up and log into the conscious waking state. It's like from deep sleep we log into the game of reality. And so in all the ways the mind occurs over the body. Like when I think about it, there's been so many ways I have looked at this world, so many ways that my value system for reality has changed, that in some sense after some point the person's like, oh my god, I'm being aware that I'm changing as an object, and I'm being aware I'm changing as a subject. So to what level can I be aware that subjects are changing? And what are subjects? Subjects are, you can say, simulated replacements for reality. I pretty much watch the moment and I notice what is moving in the moment, and if the free will moves in accordance to what is moving in the moment, it identifies as it. I would say that in front of my eyes I'm a physical self in a physical world. Behind my eyes I am an unknown watcher of how the physical world is being administered by an abstract world. If we look at imagination, there's something I'll share with the viewers. It's called Aristotle's Four Causes. And this will kind of explain the texture of the inner realms, like what I mean when I say the inner realms. So if people look at the screen, you're going to see this picture I've put on the wallpaper, which is Aristotle's Four Causes. So what does this mean? if we want to understand the causal position of something, and we think about, like, let's take a table for example. So we're like, okay, the table, it is causally exists because it's made of wood, it has a substance value, right? We're like, okay, the table exists because it has shape, it has geometry, it has form. And then we also go that the table has a causal value because it's made for something. For example, it's a dinner table, right? And it has a causal value because somebody, a carpenter, made it. So for example, religious people have a sort of efficient cause approach to reality. They look at the world and they're like, okay, there needs to be a necessary existent. That means if we were to prove the idea of God, we need to use something beyond the idea of God. If there is to be something beyond the idea of God, there needs to be a necessary existent, right? That means there has to be someone who pushed the first domino of let's say existential design. But anyways, it's important to consider these four causes, okay? Now, I want the viewers to look at these four causes, these four ways we look at something and we're like, okay, it causally exists. If we were to look at the imagination and the person's inner realms, okay? You're in, let's say, within the space of your mind, where qualia is observed. So we can say, all right, when I imagine, if I was to imagine a table right now, like close my eyes and imagine a table, I'm seeing a formal cause. I'm seeing how the content of my imagination has shape. It's visible. It's the same for dreams as well. The dream has form. Now, we also go to this view of a final cause, right? It's as if a person can imagine something and imagine it in accordance to something. So it's like I can look at the future and the idea, let's say if I think about how to prevent extinction, like that idea, it's a sort of final cause. Its value is based on what it is made for, what sort of value its design serves. Or if I think about what food I'm gonna eat and I imagine the food, right, that would be a sort of final cause to the inner realms, right? The efficient causes, this is where it gets very interesting, but before that, this is something where I say imagination is 3/4 real, right? Because I can imagine a table, but I can't touch that table and get a sensation. Like right now, I've closed my eyes, I'm imagining a table, and I'm imagining myself touching the table, but I'm not getting the sensation that I would get when I would touch a physical table. So in other words, what is missing in the inner realms is the experience of the substance of what we're seeing. In other talks, I said it that your inner realms are visible, but they're not tangible. Like you can't touch it, right? A hungry person can imagine cake, but it's not like, they can eat it. When it comes to the efficient cause, this becomes, I'll say something about this, this becomes interesting, and this is where pretty much this episode, how you move behind your eyes, is based on how you have comprehended why your inner realms, why your imagination is there, or who is it that is leading to it, right? Because the concept of who we are is an active imagination, right? Think of it this way, that the body can be considered to be in time because it's objective and the object changes in space. But the mind that is generating or leading to creating the concept of time cannot be in time. Do you know, it's kind of like with timeless minds, we're experiencing our bodies in time. We're watching the journey of the body in time. So what I'm trying to say is when we wonder about the efficient cause of our inner realms, so it's like somebody wants to use something, they want to understand what sort of ability or power they have to use it. If I was to lift a chair, I would I would lift up the chair, and like to some degree I would already know I have the power, the ability to lift up that chair, right? Like as if the energy reserve is there. But if I wanted to lift up a chair in my inner realms, our minds are giving us strangely a first person point of view where our arms and legs and body is not there. So this is what I'm trying to say. In the outer realms right now, starting from my eyes, specifically from my biological eyes, I am from a first person view, like a video game, noticing my hands. I'm noticing my hands, my feet, the upper body, but I can't see my face, right? So similarly, when it comes to the inner realms, you can't see the body of that self. So what I'm trying to say is a person, think of it this way. Let's say somebody says, I have an ego. Right? I mean, nobody ever says that, but let's say somebody says, there's an ego, or I'm functioning under an ego, or whatever, just that the person thinks they're an ego. The question comes, how do you know you're being something at all? As if the awareness requires to be beyond that thing. An example would be like the only way I could know a tree exists is that I'm not inside the tree, right? If I was inside the tree, I couldn't know the tree is there. But because I'm outside observing the tree, I can, as if there's an additional dimension. It's as if from outside of something I'm noticing something. Now, when it comes to how we move behind our eyes, there is something noticing our memories when we remember something, or something. There's a presence of attention. That presence of attention, believe it or not, this is the bizarre thing, it doesn't have a body, but it's a view. So it's like a unshaped viewer of shape. So when a person closes their eyes, whoever you are, you can try this out right. For a moment, close your eyes and tell me, close your eyes and visualize visualize like a golden sphere, or let's say a light blue sphere just hovering in front of you. Like your eyes are closed, but visualize as if you're seeing a light blue sphere. So that light blue sphere that the person visualizes in their inner realms, if I ask you, is there a body seeing that shape? What our mind is a shapeless viewer of shape. There is no body. Our minds are like a way where the universe is like, all right, human being, I don't want you to freak out, in case if you realize the dimensions of reality surpass humanization, but I'm gonna let you experience, when you close your eyes, a bodiless awareness. So it's this strange thing that the act of closing our eyes and envisioning something is in some sense sight unfiltered through the body. It's like a disembodied viewer of shape. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It's an awareness, pretty much. That's why I say we're a presence beyond a personality. The personality, to acknowledge that it is unknown, it's to acknowledge that it's in the middle of nowhere. That means I ask myself, how is it that I can close my eyes and still see? There's no light entering my eyes, but I still have access to sight. I can remember, what happened yesterday, and at the same time I can visualize the future, but it's happening in a state of mind where it doesn't need light. Or it would be in some sense like, let's say a person sees reality, then they close their eyes. So it's as if they are using that information, right? Something is seeing, or how some scholars say, there is an awareness to awareness. In the Upanishads and Vedas, there's a next level quote. I think it's in the Upanishads. It says, the seer of the seen is unseen. That means that which is looking at the one looking is not viewable. So that which is aware that you have an idea of self that is moving your body, or the awareness to the free will is unseen. unseen, unseen. So what it would require is a realization that the moment is present in an unknown way, and that behind your eyes it's a sort of viewer of shape, of subtle shape. Now the difference between the inner realms and how we move behind our eyes is pretty much we become the intent. It's the intent through attention. At some point, it's like what consciousness is like an instantaneous attention that is existing. Now, if we identify with the nature of this attention, we in some sense are, it's like I'm saying, the body and the idea of ourself are extensions of the whole moment being aware. Now, what are some ways that we can move behind our eyes? Now that I've established that when a person closes their eyes, they're an unknown viewer, to become content with the unknown is key. This is one of the most important things. The reason I say to become content with the unknown is because the unknown is where everything is leading. We appeared from the unknown, and we're living a known journey, and then we're going to enter the unknown again. So the species has to, whether it likes it or not, cultivate an understanding of how the unknown, how in an unknown world, knowledge was the flags we planted. All that has happened is that before I move, I've realized that there's an awareness there. And I've also noticed that before I imagine something or before my inner realms move, there's an awareness there. And it's as if there was a reason the sages of old, the sages from ancient times, would say that through a preferencelessness of reality, just like how Lao Tzu says action through inaction, or the ancient yogis renounced samsara. The meaning of life seems to be not to fulfill a purpose, but to discover the nature of it. Think of it this way, that there's some moments you have to do something for them to happen. And there's some moments where the person, the less they do, the more the moment happens. When it comes to moving in your mind, the less you are, there is an emotional or energetic intent to have to want to see something. There comes the freedom to see many things. It's as if the more the human being gets closer to its original state, the more the world happens. It's as if before our free will holds the steering wheel, there's an intelligence that is automatically from the world. You know, the person thinks they're moving their mind alone and it's just their persona, when the whole cosmos has an interrelation and interconnectedness beyond your conceivable ability. The simple secret I've realized that when I trust the unknown, I get to experience my mind move in different ways. But if reality has to be something specific, then the mind has nowhere to move. You know, it's like the shape has been declared absolute before it's before the possibility of saying something else. Now, if somebody says Mr. Within, you're talking about moving beyond, how the mind moves, how to move behind your eyes. Now, you're also saying that there's voluntary and involuntary movements, so could something else be moving our minds? Like, let's say a religious person says, yo, Mr. Within, God is moving my mind, you know? Or somebody says, like, you know, like in the New Age community in the Mount Shasta area, their minds are being moved by like extraterrestrials, like they're channeling aliens, right? Or in certain religious traditions, they've had this view that the inner voice is like, you know, it's like the dark side, or how would you say it? It's like the it's like demons, you know. People have it's kind of hilarious, but there has been so many different archetypes that have been imposed on the nature of the mind. People have talked to everything. There have been people on this planet who have talked to plants, people who talk to humans. People who talk to animals, people who talk to the sky. So really what our inner realms seem to be, they seem to be a space where our memories become a sort of alphabet for an unknown sequence movement of them. When a person is asked the question, who am I? That's one of the most important and profound questions that a conscious being can ask. If I ask myself right now, who am I? When my eyes are open, a biological body in a place called Earth. But when I close my eyes and I wonder, who am I am a presence that in a pitch black abyss. You know, people are like, Mr.Within, that's your eyelids. What I'm trying to say is that to close your eyes just for like even a moment, right? To just close your eyes and being like, who am I? It's like the person realizes we are like this field space of awareness that's noticing what's in it. I am right now noticing as the space is present that I am a biological body. It's as if the body is within my view. Or like my mind is a spotlight and my body's on a stage as an actor. When I wonder about what motivates this actor, I realize that especially when the eyes are closed, there is something that has an ability to release force. What purpose is the direction of our force once we release it. So one answer to how to move behind your eyes is that you realize you're an unknown viewing presence of the whole moment. And when you trust your whole moment of being, that's just being, you get to see what's within it. So you get to see, so the mind can be seen as intelligence can be seen as an unknown spotlight. And what's moving in the spotlight, it comes and goes. A person can, in their inner realms, choose to identify with its content. So you could choose to just watch your mind, or you could choose to be your mind. I would say the healthiest approach is the person trying to find the simplest moment and just breathe as the presence of their moment. And if they are simple, the complexity comes on its own. But if a person wants to dabble with the complexity of the inner realms, I will encourage people to start practicing and moving geometrically. I'm going to share an experience with you I had. Sometimes I still have experiences, you know. There's some people who their metaphysical experiences, spiritual experiences, it's like the person saw an angel, or you know, the person saw an extraterrestrial or something, you know, or they connected to the spirit of nature, right? But I would say in my inner realm, something that I didn't expect. Imagine somebody expecting angels and demons, but instead in my inner realms what I got was geometrical movement. And I have witnessed, like literally there was a time I was walking down the street, and just instantly, and my eyes were open, but in my inner realms, a geometrical shape extended from where I was in three-dimensional space, and it went to the end of the street, and from the edge of the point of that geometrical shape, I could see it. So imagine your mind. So imagine you're walking somewhere, let's say, and your mind geometrically just displays a geometrical shape. It's all automated, all on its own. This geometrical shape extends to the end of the street, and then you get a viewpoint from the end of the street that you aren't there yet. right? So what I've come to realize that perhaps the safest way before there's let's say emotional connotations to is the person human, is the person not human behind their eyes, we must first kind of acknowledge Plato's world of forms, and this would be a geometrical revolution in psychology. You see, what is really moving is shapes in space. That's really what movement is. There is an awareness to shape, and as the shape moves, there's the awareness that a shape is moving. So you can also geometrically move behind your eyes. So think of it this way, there's a geometrical dimension, and anybody who goes into that dimension has a Platonic solid value. So it would be as if, like, I'm this guy telling the viewers right now that I've had experiences, let's say, with my eyes closed or them being open, where I am like my attention is a geometrical shape, and it has a sort of geometrical movement in reality. I even termed it in one episode living geometry. Geometry that's alive on its own. You know, I could bring in a point from yoga here. There's 4 types of yoga. The word yoga means union, to join. The union of what? The union of the individual activity with the cosmic activity. Swami Krishnananda so elegantly says, meditation stops when the inseparability of the individual activity and the cosmic activity is realized. There is a path of yoga called Raja Yoga. Raja Yoga is the yoga of the intellect, and it's the yoga of understanding. So imagine yoga being a path to the ultimate state of being, or towards an ultimate truth. One path is Raja Yoga, the yoga of knowledge, right? So it's another way of saying the person can understand how values appear out of the shapes of the moment. Another path of yoga is called karma yoga. If in one approach towards truth, the person's like, all right, I'm going to go understand truth, like that's a path. Karma yoga, the person's like, I'm going to work for truth. That means it doesn't have to do with the person understanding or not understanding, but the person has to do a certain work, has to do a certain cultivation in order to be capable of seeing the truth. Right? That's the idea of karma yoga, the yoga of work. Raja yoga, the yoga of understanding. There's another yoga called Jnani yoga, or I'll say this before that, there's a type of yoga called Bhakti yoga. And I want to grant this to all those people who are compassionate in this realm. A person who seeks inner peace, a person who decides to take the algorithmic approach to reality, where they're like, okay, I'm alive once, let me love everything, let me love every dimension of my perception. So Bhakti yoga is the yoga of devotion the person is trying to access truth by loving it rather than understanding it or working for it, right? Now, you can love your world, and by loving it, you will trust your world. And when you trust your world, you will get to experience how it moves. Anything we distrust, we karmically are ejected out of. So trust is very crucial. If a person doesn't trust if you don't trust your body, how can you move as it? So pretty much how to move behind your eyes, you have to trust how there is an experiencer of abstraction when you close your eyes. There's something seeing. And if you can trust the observed and the observer when it comes to the inner realms, there's a freedom there. But when it comes to the enlightenment talk, one cannot ignore non-dualism. If someone was wondering what are 4 ways that the moment can be experienced, we can say the person can experience the moment dualistically, a self and a world. We can say the person can experience the moment in a singular fashion. So there is no self in the world, there's just one being. That means imagine everything that is being done in this universal sector is how one universal sector is being. Or imagine how every process that happens in your biological body, it's all being your body. Another view would be that the person considers the experience of the moment to be infinite. Now, this is something where I think this is the future chapter of human civilization, right? Right now, people are not walking in the streets, even the philosophers wondering about, okay, if I was an immortal being, what would my psychology look like? Would I have fear? Would I care? Would there be emotions? Would I be bored from seeing change? Like, what sort of experience would something that is going on an infinite walk, like what sort of experience can it have? And finally, the person can be that look at the moment and be like the moment is nothing. So this is the bizarre thing. In front of our eyes, it's a relationship with everything. Behind our eyes, it's a relationship with nothing. And so when I say we are an unknown presence beyond the known personality, or an unknown attention to a known person, it's like I'm saying nothing is looking at everything. Or when it comes to imagination, everything that the person has accessed, it's like nothing. It's like free will is a bridge, is a signal that from nothing is hitting everything. Okay? So this is the crucial thing, right? That to truly move as a mind is to move as a being that is aware of the body and the inner realms and outer realms at the same time, right? And this requires cultivation. So human beings, we cultivate reality in different ways. There is an existential cultivation. I could look at myself as a being and being like, okay, just by existing in a world, I'm cultivating existential awareness, right? When I close my eyes and visualize or see like film snippets to reality, and then in some sense notice a movement and then to communicate it in the outer realms, it's like you might not believe this, but how baffling consciousness is that nothing is is trying to move everything. So when a person can become content with being nothing, you get an access to everything. So believe it or not, it's humility that arises from the simplest state of the mind, which is honesty. A person's imagination of mind will activate when there isn't a sort of expectation for how the moment should be. When there isn't that expectation, when the person is an unknown, a viewer that has no expectation on reality, then it's as if the mind becomes a space filled up with form. You see, sometimes a good question can release many worlds at the same time. In an unknown world, the strategy of this unknown creature, was to know itself in accordance to its limitations. Think of it this way: the known body leads to unlimited life. The unknown mind leads to a limitless life. So it's kind of like in an unchanging way, we are witnessing how we're changing. Unchanging because the viewer is attributeless. So I treat it in this way, that I have right now, as I'm speaking to you, a visible life. There's an invisible life and there's an inconceivable life. When my invisible life, which is the idea of me, realizes there's an inconceivable life, if it trusts the instant unknown, then it has freedom to move. And it's another way of saying how we move behind our eyes is through vision of the world. It's remarkable. In front of our eyes, we're a self in the world. Behind our eyes, we're a world in the self. And when you can watch your moment, so it's like, think of it this way: there's a visible self and there's a visible world. Now Mr.Within is saying most human beings who have names and personalities, that's a proof of an invisible self. Now we choose to ignore that there's an invisible world, but it's necessary to acknowledge. because reality, obviously, our sight is like a limited range in the electromagnetic spectrum, the unobservable universe. It's like, what's the value of the unobservable? It's a suggestion of the edge of our observable reality. I'm pretty much saying my relationship with my imagination has turned into an inconceivable witness that the free will is how the invisible life projects a design for the visible body to actualize, to fulfill. So my recommendation would be to viewers, find a moment in this lifetime where wherever you are, just sit down. If you're in the kitchen cooking food, turn off the stove and just sit down. Right? Just sit down wherever you are. Sit down on the kitchen floor. And the reason I'm saying sit down is because sitting on the ground is humbling. Right? I have yet to see, like a president of a nation, like sitting on the grass and talking to people. It's always on some majestic podium. But just sit down wherever you are, and for a second, forget all ideas of meditations and teachings and promises of truth, and just be like, okay, I'm alive once in this form. The life seems to be physically a one-time journey, and so far in this life, how have I become acquainted with my mind? That means truly, whoever you are, wonder about how your intelligence is happening, wonder about the dimensions that it's happening, and wonder why a creature that exists shouldn't know its experience. It's our birthright to realize what we are. Do you know? That's something that ideological systems take away. They just give the person a story, and then they're like, okay, believe in the story, never ask a question again, and that's going to be your life. It's not enough to wonder about how we are being a character in the world. Means that regardless of how the past has convinced us to have a specific value system in the present, there is the dimensions of novelty. The concept of the new is the most remarkable, one of the most remarkable ideas. So wonder about how is your mind happening that you have not noticed. And through my experience as a person, my mystical experience, I have come to the conclusion that I have been inconceivably watching how conception has been moving my body. When I say inconceivable, it's another way of saying there is no location. So deep down, I have this feeling that even though I am in the world, I am not the world. I am watching it. But that watcher doesn't have an attribute to be a type of watcher. So it's like that moment where, just like you're watching your body move, you close your eyes and you notice the content of your inner realms move. And there's a moment where the person's like, who is aware that an idea of self or my personality is being my body? And in an instant, just in one instant it takes, you have to notice that reality is too simple to be complex. And that's when the mind deliberates, finds its presence. I thought about it this way. There's sociocultural system, there's values that the world gives you, and there's ways that we give the world value. But for a moment, it's like the person's like, okay, if truth exists, it's existing now. If I wonder about how I am experiencing poetically the here and now, I will come to realize that the existence of the whole moment is being the potential of my experience. So I'm trying to say it's like a shift of approach and perspective to reality, where the person thinks they're a self in a world to a point where the person realizes it's more like an unknown It's like if our psychology is like the known trying to understand the unknown. On the flip side, it's like realizing the unknown knows how to know. Really what it is I have no idea how 8 billion human beings, how other human beings are experiencing their inner realms. This is, when it comes to mysticism, it's like a human being that realized nobody can teach you about the eyes that you only have. That you only have. And there's so many ways that the mind moves that we don't have even words for. We think everything that happens to us we can communicate. Not the case. There's so many silent moments in life where we are just an observer, you know. I remember when I was young, my family was visiting London, and at some point we reached the square where everybody was taking photographs, and I was just thinking, whoa, in the background of how many photographs am I? Like a random tourist taking photographs, and it's like, in how many photos have I just been like a background character just walking, you know? And sometimes in life, even though the aim of success as an individual, right, is to be the main character of your life, but to realize that there's moments in life where we are the background. To truly be a mystic is to discover that the concept's value is coming from the context, but if the context is the whole moment, and the moment, the edge of the world is unknown, so ultimately we are being a known conceptual entity in an unknown space. So to be acquainted with the nature of that unknown space is learning how the mind moves. It's another way of saying, like what I'm saying to the viewers, is if you want to know how to move behind your eyes, you have to wonder about the unknown variables of your experience, and you have to wonder how your attention is being the moment instantly. And I feel that's enough to realize the nature. And every person's mind, because we have different DNAs, it doesn't mean everybody. It's like, like if we were a species of clones, then we'd be like, okay, one path of enlightenment for everybody, you know. But because we're all different, it's the nature of our intelligence, right? There's this idea where they say that everything has a natural disposition, and especially people, you know, and their natural disposition, you can bring an argument of nurture and nature. If you're a transcendentalist, a metaphysicist, you may think that the person's personality is based on what they bring with themselves from another dimension to this dimension, as if Buddhists believe in reincarnation. So a person's personality is like these transcendental eyes journeying through lifetimes. And also something very important is that the mind should have an ability, and probably this happens when people meditate often, because what is meditation? You're making yourself a single point of concentration. So it's like you're having single pointed concentration on how your whole moment is being, how your moment of being. It's like meditation is somebody studying how their self is happening, pretty much. When that moment comes where the person realizes the unknown is present, there comes the option of what do we do with the unknown. Now, if you are to trust the unknown, that's a smart strategy, right? If you trust the unknown presence, but if you trust the known shape, then that becomes a distraction. If somebody, let's say, thinks that their mind, like they think in their inner realms they're talking to a specific shape, like a specific persona, then the person can get attached to the content of their mind. And the idea is not about just dualistic perspectives of trust and doubt. I'm just saying there comes a moment in this life where the person's like, okay, why am I here? And it makes sense to trust to see how the moment goes forth. So if you can trust your whole moment of being in an instant, you can, in a matter of speech, instantly know how to work as your mind. And it's ultimately a contentment with the unknown. I can't emphasize this enough. Our species has been literally like they hide the eyes of children from, let's say, things that are intense. Similarly, our species has hidden our true nature from us through a massive storification and language worship and linguistic simulation. We are right now living at a time where people think they are their names, but their name is how their attention is in the moment, There's a living unknown presence here. And when I say inconceivable, somebody would be like Mr.Within. Are you saying trusting our unknown being like somebody trusting an inconceivable soul, or how the religious person trusts an inconceivable God? And I would say, simply put, like, because our minds are conditioned through duality, I think the smoothest approach is to be like, okay, life is an event. It's like an existential event, and when consciousness experiences this existential event, it interprets it as known or unknown based on what is familiar, what it is familiar with. So it's another way of saying, to even care about how you're moving behind your eyes is another way of saying the person's like, what do I do with the unknown moments of reality? Now, one approach is to try to know it, and that works to some degree, especially if you're walking to infinitely, like towards infinity, which the species wanting to survive. It's like an urge to. It's like an eternal urge to be manifest in a moment, but it's like an eternal urge. But I don't know, what I've realized is that I take certain principles with me in my character. First approach is that I don't take the reality too seriously, but it doesn't mean it's a static view all the time. I have realized that when I am playful with the world, like the nature of my mind is playful, then I access reality in a playful way. If I'm serious or have like an intense, if I'm angry, then my mind leads to archetypes of anger. Somebody who let's say has freedom in their inner realms, they have to be careful too. Right? Why? Because if they get convinced by their inner realms, that ability can manifest. It's another way of saying, like, an advanced mind or advanced being chaotic, then it accesses advanced chaos. Being ordered, it accesses advanced order. So it's the nature of your mind. It's the nature of how an unknown attention has held a known world. And to appreciate this, to be fascinated again about how your life is unknown. It's like somebody thought, I'm a failure, but then they're like, wait a minute, there's unknown variables to reality. How can I know I'm a failure, right? Or somebody being like, I'm successful, and all the religious traditions and wisdom traditions being like, yo man, be humble, don't get possessed by your fame, So So ultimately what I'm saying is that whoever you are, The sages said you can either trust life or distrust it. I would say trust life, but also don't fear if you don't know what's going on, and don't fear if you don't understand it, and don't fear if you're at the frontiers of if you're at the epitome of understanding it and realize it's unknown. Because what truth means is truth has no obligation to fit the container of how our memories create a preference of what to expect from the moment in regards to how it goes forward. And this, how to move behind your eyes, there is 8 billion ways. There are so many different ways to move behind our eyes. There's so many ways we already are moving behind our eyes. A person, by changing their physical environment, can change their inner realms, you know? In the subtitle, when I say cultivating internal teleportation through reality simulations, it's kind of realizing your mind, the body accesses sensory perception. The body is seeing something. Like, the body doesn't have to imagine reality, it just instantly accesses it or is in it, right? Is part of it. But the mind is an extension of reality. So hilariously, the mind can be seen as an echo. So what memories are echoes of the past that are still poetically audible by the mind. We still don't know how potentially multidimensional we are. Every human being should begin living life as if they have a known life and an unknown life. And the content of your inner realms, your imagination, your mind, is clues in discovering that unknown mind. Rather than us being imagination doesn't exist, we have to ask, why is it even there in the first place? Why can the person see when they close their eyes? You know, it's questions like these that take us to what is really steering the attention. It's like free will is the steering wheel of another dimension, you know. And we cultivate internal teleportation by just realizing how thoughts come and go. As the sage Sri Ramana Maharshi says, let what comes come, let what goes go, see what remains. And to see the seer within is to allow ourselves to be the watcher of worlds. From an evolutionary animal, frightened evolutionary animal, we are going towards the might and the courage of an unknown force journeying through the void of the cosmos. We are the life force of reality. You know, we are literally, like, pun intended, the life force, you know, forces of life shaping reality. We are like such advanced technology. We literally take sunlight, translate it into inner worlds, and then create a character and have that character live in reality. You know, we're like solar powered miracles. And it's all about the nature of your attention. In some talks I speak about piloting consciousness. And dear viewers, know this, that the person speaking to you now, I have experienced so many moments where I have been empty-handed in my inner realm. So many moments where I felt I have been abandoned by my mind. But it was in those moments that I realized poetically, it's like the faith of the soul. You know what it is? In the Bhagavad Gita, there's this incredible metaphor for the soul, mind, and body. And it's the metaphor of someone sitting in a chariot, the chariot driver and the horses. In the Bhagavad Gita, there seems to be the suggestion that the body is the horses, and the horses are being steered by what? By the mind, which is the chariot driver. So just like the mind moves the body, the chariot driver is controlling the body. Now the soul is the person sitting inside the chariot, right? And the person sitting in the chariot is not observable, but our personality is the chariot driver. So imagine, in a manner of speech, your personality is driving your body, but what it is driving, why it's driving, is due to a hidden value embedded in the moment. So the chariot driver is sitting in the chariot. The chariot driver, poetically, the unknown soul, the inconceivable soul, is trusting how the invisible mind, the will, the free will, is moving the visible body. Now imagine a person has fear or hopelessness or anguish, and it's as if the horses are not being directed or steered properly by the chariot driver. So it's in that moments when the mind doesn't know what to do with the body, is poetically when the chariot driver steps out, when and taps the mind on the shoulder, taps the chariot driver and says, hey, watch where you're going. And it's another way of saying that when the mind distrusts existence, the revelation of a trust of a hidden context leads it to its salvation, brings it back into order. So what I'm trying to say is that when it comes to the inner realms, it's like trying to tell where the chariot driver should go. Like the person's wondering, okay, how can my mind move my body? But when you realize the inconceivable witness is the soul in the chariot, our mind already knows where to go before the body is born, poetically. So it's another way of saying an inconceivable force lives an invisible life as a field, as an energetic field, and then from this energetic field, instantaneously the knowing, that means the chariot driver knows why it's driving the chariot, and when it trusts who it is driving, that's when the horses have the greatest purpose. So it's another way of saying when the known body doesn't know what to do, which usually the mind is directing it, so it's in motion, so the chariot is in motion. But when you realize your mind is moving your body, it's another way of saying an invisible force is animating visibly. Now, what can the invisible trust in? And the only answer is the inconceivable. I have thought about this in so many ways. I've tried to approach this in so many ways that I'm like, wait a minute, the body is an object, the mind is a subject. What can be aware of a subject and object simultaneously that it's not a subject? Do you understand? The only way we are knowing we are a subject is because we are not a subject. That's why we can choose to be a subject. So the mystery of reality is present. Do not fear the unknown, and let us as a species advance towards the advanced humanity that does not fear any dimension, because the power of comprehension is there, right? Just like the chariot driver at any moment can step out and be like, hey, mind, don't forget why you're moving the body, right? And it goes to the trust of the inconceivable. And the only way to trust the inconceivable is instantaneously. And this is what the idea of faith in religion tries to capture, right? Many religious people, this is my own a theological observation. If somebody says, Mr. Within, do you believe in God? I would say if I believe in God, the monotheistic God, it's another way of saying I don't believe in God. Let me tell you why the belief in God is a contradiction of actually believing in God. At least I'm introduced to I was raised in Iran. For some time I was born in Iran, so Iran's a theocracy. Religion's kind of embedded in the political system of the country. But it's like at a young age, every child is aware of what the significance of religion. And so there's this view that God is inconceivable, and the inconceivable creator of the universe has no partner. If a person chooses to believe in God, they are choosing to be a partner to God. That means if somebody says they know the inconceivable or they believe in the inconceivable, that's impossible, right? So what I'm trying to say is, like, a person who believes in God trusts instantaneously the presence of such a thing as God, but cannot ideologically shape God, because that is to create a partner for it. It's as if to believe in God is to believe language is a partner of God. Do you see what I'm saying? The belief in the language contradicts the inconceivability of God. Do you know? So really, I think what true religion is complete trust of the universal moment. I think that's the aim. Or as earlier I was saying, Swami Krishnananda says, religion is God remembering himself. It's another way of saying the visible body, the invisible mind are remembering that they are the presence of the inconceivable. So what I'm actually saying is that when a person goes to wonder about how they can move behind their eyes, they're actually realizing an inconceivable instantaneity of how the invisibly abstract and the visibly real are present. This world is encapsulated in mystery. It is surrounded by mystery. The effort of every human being is to be an explorer of their realm. So if you are someone who wants to move behind your eyes, do not forget the potential advancement and vision of the world. It's another way of saying, in the most honest moment of the human being, the true world is already there. Truth is not something you find, but rather something you remember, if you want it to be real. And the truth beyond our memories, you can only instantaneously be. So I'm saying that when we want to move our body, we think about what can we do, but when you want to move behind your eyes as a mind, you have to wonder about how your being will lead to instantaneous moments where the person can see a sort of paradoxical nature of reality, right? So it's as if the person can discriminate, all right, my mind is moving in this way, the inner event of reality is happening this way, the outer event of reality is happening separate, independent to my inner realm, Or who was it? Wittgenstein says something in the sense of like the world happens independent to my will, right? The instantaneous access to all that we can be is how all we can be. So I am saying, really, I think this is it, that the way you can move your behind your eyes, if you trust all the worlds and how your sense of self is their intersection. You see, it's rather than thinking what do we do with knowledge, it's an approach of what do we do with the unknown. And the species has feared the unknown for too long. The activation of the advanced humanity awaits. Thanks for listening, guys. And what can be said other than rise, mankind, rise. Your eyes are the wonder that makes the world a wonder. You know, we are one of the wonders of reality. You know, just like we have like the pyramids of Egypt being one of the wonders of the world. Similarly, to be a conscious entity in a universal sector where we seem to be the most advanced thing happening, it's like, it's not just a privilege, it's like a privilege of eternity to be a temporary being. It's like an unknown eternal being. It's like, yo, I could be a temporary human for a little while. Whoa, you know. And of course, guys, remember this: benevolence, the idea of benevolence, is the greatest guide in your inner realms. That means when you move as an object, of course, there's physical conditions to realize, but when you move in your inner realms, the mind has strangely an unconditional ability to animate perception. So by just an instant, a person's attention moving, realities can simulate in the inner realms. But if you, just like a chess game, you know, if you watch how, imagine in chess, you're the pieces that move second, right? So it's as if you are first watching how the world moves, then you're in some sense believing in how the self is in a world, right? So it's as if we let the unknown world make the first move, then our knowledge applies. And what is cultivating internal teleportation? It's another way of saying, throughout the day, try to be aware of in how many ways your mind animated or actualized in accordance to an inner design. It's another way of saying, let's say we live a day. In one day, imagine the brain simulates itself. You know, let's say somebody has to interview 10 different people in one day, right? It would be another way of saying that person's brain is simulating 8 times, right? But in reality, the brain is simulating as many times as we blink, right? Sometimes I feel blinking is there, like the reason we blink is so that the amygdala can stay active, the fight or flight response. It's another way of saying we're genetically designed to rescan the moment, in every moment, to reposition our attention. But the nature of what is looking out through our eyes is unknown. If we want to look at the one who's looking at the moment, it's like we cannot see, the experience does not explain the experiencer. And so 8 billion creatures, 8 billion unknown creatures in an unknown world, realizing that knowledge was just a blindfold or a box over their heads. It's not that we ignore knowledge, but its knowledge is leading to the unknown. Because even from a scientific angle, it's like when we discover something new, it updates our understanding of the past. So as long as there is the new, the past cannot be king. The past cannot be a ruler. Be benevolent with your own mind. Be an ally of your mind. Be an ally of your moment. Trust your moment. And if you can trust your world, the authorization of advancement is already there. Trust your moment, and your mind will become the greatest teacher, and once it has given its greatest teacher. Think of it this way. The body's imagine the body's a student of the mind, and then the mind is the student of the unknown soul. So our minds are a way of realizing how another dimension is moving here. The mysteries of reality. It's how vision went beyond vision. We are the miracle of many worlds in one moment. We are the advancement. We are the advanced soul of this universal sector. The destiny of the human species is a greatness beyond our eyes. And it's a greatness that will be remembered. So it's another way of saying, in the future, if we go towards a sort of collective intelligence, it's going to be a way of saying we are remembering the future. Anything we want to do, we trust. We trust because we understand. We understand because the mind, in some sense, positions value in a acceptable way in the moment. To trust the unknown is the ultimate, because where else can knowledge go? Thanks for listening, guys. Much blessings and namaste. And if you choose to move behind your mind, one must wonder about not just how the self is being in the world, but how many worlds journey behind your eyes, and the self from those worlds activates in the outer realms. That means I'm saying that the best way to move behind your eyes is to be the circle of the yin-yang symbol rather than jumping between the yin-yang. If a person can trust the simplest moment of being, which is an instant, then they can trust the complex. If the mind realizes that the body has no fear of itself or the world, it releases its power. But its power is, I shouldn't say power, the mind, it's like when attention trusts where it is, it can dance. Benevolence is the ultimate. An advanced being no longer has anything to prove. It is just being it. It's another way of saying, would an enlightened being continue to be enlightened? No, because it's being it, the concept becomes unnecessary. So when we truly are being this unknown viewer within, there is no concept of known or unknown. That's the power of trust. The faith in an instant was the revelation of all worlds. Namaste. Rise, mankind, rise.